There are hundreds of iconic moments across all types of sports, but when it comes to track and field, there is one man whose name will forever be etched into the history books. Retired British athlete Derek Redmond is best known for two specific moments on the athletics track during his career, but it's the incredible work he does at Thomas International, which perhaps should receive the same sort of recognition. Derek, it's an incredible honor to have you speak to us here at the Rugby Business Network.
Thanks very much. Good to speak to you too.
Well, Derek, the two extraordinary moments I just alluded to is, of course, being part of that winning 4x400 meter British relay team that defeated the Americans at the 1991 World Championships. But it's the inspiring moment during the 400 meter semi-finals at the 1992 Olympic Games in Barcelona, which you are best known for. For those who are not part of the over 16 million people that have viewed that moment on YouTube, please briefly inform our listeners, and how did this influence you when it came time to put away your running shoes?
Well, yeah, the incident obviously back in 92 was I was one of the favourites for a medal. I'd won the first two rounds, the heat and the second round. And then it came to the semi-final, which, to be honest, we thought, my dad, my coach, everybody was going to be pretty much a formality. And unfortunately, I pulled a hamstring 150 metres into the race. And me being me, I decided I wasn't going to give up there. I still felt, even with a pulled hamstring, I could qualify. So I decided to continue and hobble my way around the track, which I did, and got to sort of the 250 metre mark, had maybe 150 metres to go, and my dad decided to fight his way through the crowd and help me, finish the race, because there'd been a lot of officials trying to get onto the track and stop me from completing the race, and my dad could see I wanted to finish, so he basically helped me across the line, and it's the image that everybody remembers, with my arms around my dad and his arms around me, and us sort of walking over the line, or as I like to refer to it as me being beaten by my dad in the Olympic semi-finals.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I'm really honest with you, it was done for my own reasons back in 1992. I had no idea that the public would receive it in the way that they did, and it would go on to inspire and help people in all different walks of life, not only from sport. And in fact, I would say I've had more reaction from people outside of sport than I actually have from people who are actually involved in sport.
Well, Derek, that remarkable moment 25 years ago of how the human spirit is able to conquer all has earned you the label of the Olympian who never gave up. Is this what guided you into becoming a motivational speaker? And if it was not for that moment, what career path do you think you would have pursued?
That's a great question. I would say yes. Obviously, that incident is something that in the first couple of years after it happened, it was the last thing I wanted to speak about. However, it was the one thing that I was questioned about all the time. And once I started receiving letters and emails and messages from people, I realized, as I said before, that it started to touch people's, it touched people's lives in different ways.
Absolutely.
And that's what sort of started me speaking about it and talking about it, and it helped me actually get over it. So yes, it was very instrumental into me becoming a motivational speaker, as well as the incident prior to that at the World Championships, because there's this great story behind that. The other part of your question is, what would I have been doing? That's a great question. I really don't know. I did what a lot of retired athletes do when I first retired. I became a personal trainer. Whether I would have followed that path or not, I don't know. But I really don't know. I love what I do now, and I work a lot with organisations and companies, not only from an individual point of view, but also from a team point of view. I'm a performance coach as well, so I help try and get the best out of teams, departments, organisations, through a number of ways. And I absolutely love what I do, and I love seeing the results.
Well, Derek, speaking of organizations, 2 years ago you joined a psychometric assessment provider, Thomas International, as their group performance director. How did this come about, and what sort of a difference is this organization making in sport?
Okay, well, it came about by accident. Coincidentally, I happened to be speaking at an event where one of the directors of Thomas Sport was actually in the audience, and he approached me after, and we had a conversation. He then arranged for me to take a couple of the psychometric assessments, and then it was when I was having my feedback over the phone by somebody, it blew my mind. this first assessment that looks at your behaviours, your work-based behaviours, was a 8-minute assessment that you do online, and I couldn't believe the results that came back of this person who didn't know me. They may have known of me, but they didn't know me, and they were talking to me about the way I like to behave, the way I like to communicate, my motivators, my demotivators, and it was so spooky that my wife was with me at the time, and I put my phone on speakerphone and said, you have to listen to this. And as this person down the phone was continually telling me about myself, I was going, no, that's not me. My wife was going, yep, that is you. You do that. And it was just unbelievable. And I could see how this assessment would help me and aid me with the work that I was doing with organisations, certainly when it came to teamwork and building successful teams. So we work in business and in sport and in education, so we work across the board, actually. In sport, it's fantastic because you can begin to look at the behaviours of individuals in a team event, for argument's sake, and it gives you a bit of an understanding of what to say to people and what not to say to people at certain times. Also, the relationship between the coach and the athlete, and the important one for me is relationships between the coach, athlete and parent, because sometimes unwittingly and unknowingly a parent can be the worst part of that equation, and it's something that is very difficult to say to a parent, please butt out if you're the coach, because sometimes it's that parent that's paying for that coach, whatever the sport is, to be able to coach their child. So sometimes it's great when you can explain to a parent or a coach or an athlete, these are your behaviours, this is what you need to be aware of, and this is possibly where you need to modify your behaviour in order for that team to sort of run a little bit smoother and therefore get the best out of the athlete that you're looking for.
Absolutely fascinating, Derek. Well, Derek, selecting the right team members, whether it be in business or in sport, is crucial in achieving the desired result or outcome. You have had first-hand experience of this with the British 400-meter relay team at the World Championship, as you and I both mentioned a little bit earlier. How did this team selection enable you to beat the highly fancied Americans on that day?
Well, again, that was something that really did come down to the relay team, and we were a very close-knit relay squad. We knew each other very well, all 6 athletes, even though only 4 ran in the final. And the team management and the coaches and the whole coaching staff had come up with an order that they felt was going to, give us a chance of winning a silver medal, because we were pretty much favourites for the silver, which was fine. But we actually felt we got a chance of the gold here, and when those chances come around, you don't turn them up. You've got to make the most of them. So we actually said, look, we've got a chance of the gold, but it would mean us changing the order around. So we, between us, came up with an order that we felt tactically would give us the best chance of winning a gold medal. But the team management wasn't really in agreement. And our attitude was, well, basically, we don't care. We're the ones running. We're the ones who are putting our necks on the line, and this is what we feel will give us the best chance of a gold medal. And they were more worried about us spoiling our chance of the silver than going for the gold. And our attitude was, look, if this fails, we'll win a silver anyway, because we couldn't see ourselves getting any worse than a silver medal. So the things that I learn and I take out of that, and there are a number of things, again, is because we knew each other so well, we spent a lot of time out of season training together. When the conversation came up about changing the order and putting one of our slowest men on the last leg rather than our fastest man, that guy on the last leg didn't feel like he had to play up to his ego and say, well, I'm the fastest, I want to run the last leg. He felt that was the right move, and he said, and in fact, I should run the first leg for these reasons. And then I said, well, I will run this. And we all just spoke about it, and it was almost like everything fell into place. And sometimes I find in work, people are afraid to do things slightly different, to do things that's not the norm, because they're afraid of the repercussions if it goes wrong. We weren't afraid of the repercussions if it went wrong. This was our decision. It was something different. It had never been done at that level before, to take your fastest man off the last leg and put what was one of our slowest men and put our slowest man, on that last leg, and put our fastest man on that first leg. So these were things that were almost pioneering. We were. It sounds quite a thing to say, but it was. We changed the thought process of that event. We started saying to people, you don't need to put your fastest man on the last leg. It doesn't have to go that way. You can put who you want on whatever leg, depending on the competition, the teammates that you've got. You need to be a bit more innovative. You need to be a bit different. And if you are a successful team or business or association, the worst thing you can do is stand still when you're being successful. Because if you begin to stand still, you're actually going backwards. And your opposition will look at what you're doing, will improve on what you're doing, and that's when you need to really look at what you're doing and change tack. So, we learned a lot from that race, and it's the sort of thing that I try and share with people, that, you don't need to always do the norm.
Well, it's evident, Derek, that those experiences of correct team selection back then have followed you into the business space today. What are some of the key fundamentals you keep in mind personally when it comes to partnering with colleagues within the workplace, or even collaborating with other businesses on a project?
There's quite a few things, to be honest with you. It really does depend on what that collaboration is. So, for me, one of the most important things is the understanding of an individual, their behaviours. So that self-awareness is really important. Not only theirs, but mine, and them understanding me. As I said before, it's having that self-awareness of and understanding how people behave within the workplace, whether they're under pressure, and that's the same within sport. People behave differently from when they're training to when they're competing, and people need, certainly coaches, let's look at sport for the moment. Coaches need to understand the right thing to say to people and not the right thing. I'll give you a brilliant example that I think of, a great captain, and we'll use a sport that we're both familiar with, and that's rugby. So in 2003, when England were playing Australia in the final of the World Cup in Sydney, Martin Johnson was obviously the captain of the team, and a very good friend of mine is open-side flanker Neil Back, and he told me this story of Martin, that even in the warm-up games, even in all the pool games, Martin would always lead the team out, and Neil Back would be the second person to run out onto the park. And just before they left the tunnel, just before they run out, Martin would always turn and shout some final words of encouragement to the team when they're all lined up behind him. And he did that every single game. And then when it came to the final, they were lining up in the tunnel in Sydney, Australia on one side, England on the other side, and 30 seconds before they were due to run out, Martin Johnson turned round, and Neil Back was just waiting to hear these words of encouragement, and Martin sort of turned round, looked at all the players, and just turned back. Didn't say a word.
Wow.
And after the game, England won the game, obviously, with that Johnny Wilkinson drop goal. Everyone remembers that. After the game, they were, as I refer to it, in a rehydration chamber, rehydrating and celebrating. And Neil Back said to Martin Johnson, "Mate, what happened? In the tunnel, you turned around and you didn't say anything." And Martin Johnson just replied to Neil and said, "Listen, mate, every single game I turned around and I gave them those last words of encouragement." He says, "But when I turned around in that tunnel for the final and I looked at the eyes of the players, there was nothing I was going to say that was going to make anything different, that was going to make any good."
Wow.
So sometimes it's knowing your people or knowing what to say, but also what not to say is as important. And to me, that's a great example of somebody knowing his people, knowing what they need, knowing what they don't need. And, he's the ultimate leader. He was the ultimate captain in my book because he did exactly the right thing. So, for me, that is the first and foremost, is that understanding of your people, that behaviour. It really does make a huge difference, whether it's in sport or whether it's in business.
Brilliant example. Derek, I'm sure you will agree that whether you're a 400-meter sprinter like yourself or a professional rugby player, having the correct tools in place to select a career after retiring from a professional or semi-professional sport is imperative. What do you think are some of the transferable skills between sport and business, and in what way can athletes and rugby players alike apply their traits and values to business?
Another great question. Do you know what? One of the biggest issues I have with sportsmen and women who have been very successful in their given field is they don't realise some of the transferable skills that they actually have. You know, and I say this to a lot of organisations and companies and business. You could do a lot worse than take on someone from the world of sport, because when you look at pretty much any job that is advertised, some of the things that they're looking for are people who are self-starters, people who have got tenacity, people, you know, who are able to pick themselves up, people who have discipline. Well, you're just talking about a sports person.
Yeah,
you know, most sportsmen and women have that in abundance. And actually, they are the difficult things to teach in people. So if somebody's already got those skills, you can teach them how to, I don't know, sell whatever it is that you're selling, or make whatever you're making, or learn the actual trade. But those fundamentals are not the easiest thing to develop in people. And sportsmen, especially successful sportsmen and women, have that. And I have a couple of sayings that, you know, the mindset of a successful sports person actually isn't much different to the mindset of a successful business person. You know, they have very similar attributes. So there's so many transferable skills. And actually, I treat business as a sport, and my second saying is sport is a business and business is a sport. The only difference is the actual activity that you're taking part in. You know, there's competition. You know, you're always looking to improve. There are so many things again that are that have the similarities between sport and business. So confidence for a sports person is one of the things that they lack when they leave a familiar world of sport. So when they tend to not have the confidence that they believe that they can actually achieve whatever it is they've done in sport in another field. And that's one of the areas that I think sportsmen and women need to work on, because it's an area that, you know, they're out their comfort zone a little bit. But again, once they've been in it for long enough, they can then begin to use what they've got. And I went through it myself. You know, there's a number of stages that you go through when you leave the world of sport and have to go into the big bad world of business. And one of the first ones is anxiety. You know, am I going to be successful in business as I am in sport?
Definitely.
And you know, that's something that again comes down to confidence and having an understanding and belief that you can do it. You know, you've got to be able to show to that sports person that, you know what, you've done it in one field. There's no reason why you can't be successful in another, because you've got a lot of the DNA, as far as I'm concerned, to be able to do it.
Absolutely spot on. Finally, Derek, Thomas International is a commercial partner of the Rugby Business Network's Life After Rugby program, which I'm sure you're aware of. In your opinion, though, why is it important for businesses like Thomas International and programs like Life After Rugby to exist?
All right, well, you know, as I said, I've kind of partly answered that, because at the end of the day, most organisations, I would assume, are looking to employ the best people that they can. And with both organisations, you know, we can help filter some of these rugby players and other sportsmen into that direction. You know, as I say, I'm a big believer that if you've been successful in one field, it doesn't mean that's all you're ever going to be successful for. And whether it's in the world of rugby or in another sport, what the Rugby Business Network in and what we're doing, we're giving the opportunity to these young men who are still young in their lives, the opportunity to find another passion that doesn't involve an oval-shaped ball, and that's the difference, or running around in a circle. And I say, for companies and organisations to be able to tap into the minds of some of these great rugby players or other athletes or other sportsmen, it's got to be good for them. So, you know, for us as a business, certainly from Thomas's point of view, we are trying to make people better at what they do. We're trying to improve people's ability organisations' ability to do a better job than what they're doing. And obviously, the Rugby Business Network is very instrumental in helping us do that. And I think personally, it's a great partnership, and it's beginning to have some traction and some success.
Well, Derek, it's been inspirational and insightful, to say the least, having you chat to us here at the Rugby Business Network. And may you long continue to inspire others through the incredible work you do.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.